the return of the 101. Christian McCaffrey is expected to make his season debut.
I understand the concerns. It's just tough for me to get in below low end wide receiver one.
People let this man slide to the bottom half of the first round. Couldn't have been us.
All of those things add up for me to 100 yards and a touchdown.
Taysom Hill, give me 80 plus total yards and not one but two trips to the end zone. Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Life Show. Happy Friday, everybody. I'm your host, Ian Hartiz. It is a great day to be great, and it's a great day to break down a thrilling edition of Thursday Night Football, as well as all the fantasy-relevant injuries you need to know ahead of Week 10. Joining me, as always, on this lovely Friday morning, it's the one, the only Director of Analytics here at Fantasy Life, Dwain "The Rock" McFarland. Dwain, let's have the Ravens play the Bengals every game and see what happens, man.
I tell you what, I like this version of Thursday Night Football. Really enjoyed a couple of weeks ago. Next week, man, we get the Eagles and the Commanders. You have to look, Al Michaels. You got to be feeling good for him. Like it was I felt like it was like a 3-year run of just brutalness. Like it was just so terrible. At least two years, however long he's been doing Amazon, it has been really rough with him and Kirk Herbstreit with the matchups they've gotten. And a lot of times it's come down to, you know how it works, injuries. It looks like on paper this might be a good matchup, like 6 weeks before the season starts. You get there, football's a brutal game. You got the quarterback missing, a top wide receiver, and a game can fall apart in a hurry. Two very healthy squads last night, Ian, and both capable of putting up a lot of points. That's what we love.
I'm on record saying I do appreciate my Thursday football being of the bad variety, but even I must admit, Dwayne, that was pretty exciting out there. So Ravens took down the Bengals 35-34. Late 2-point conversion attempt ultimately came up with nothing. Bengals fans will, of course, point out that, yes, Joe Burrow did get face masked on the play, but, the refs just didn't see it, I guess. So shout out LASIK for once again offering free surgery for all the NFL refs out there. But Bengals covered the +6 anyway. They overcashed at 53. Dwayne mentioned on the show this week, the first time these two teams played, they accounted for the most combined points in a game this season. Thursday night accounted for the 7th most. So again, great stuff all around. And on the Ravens side, finally, Dwayne, we got a huge game out of Mark Andrews with him actually in our starting lineups. Caught 6 of 7 targets, 468 yards, and a touchdown. 94% route rate, Dwayne. Is that good?
That is good. And for the first time this season, I enjoyed plugging him into lineups yesterday, Ian. So it felt really good. But yeah, 94% route participation, 22% target share. So Mark Andrews, we talked about this earlier in the season. Maybe some of this was also due to the injury. He didn't just get the playing time last night because Likely was out. He also looked pretty good. Like the guy was actually separating the broadcast. The broadcast crew did a good job of actually going back and replaying a couple of those plays where he had some shake and he was pulling away from defenders. So I also thought it was pretty low key funny on the near interception by Cam Taylor-Britt, how he's sliding right next to him and has a perfect view of him dropping the ball. And like before the ref, like he's already calling it no, incomplete. Like I did a terrible job on Twitter of trying to find an image that I thought did that, which was basically a mechanic sliding out from under a car. But like that's the sort of viewpoint that Mark Andrews had to that potential interception by Cam Taylor-Britt, just sliding on the grass right next to him, facing right at the ball, which was awesome. But yeah, Mark Andrews, as long as we don't have Likely, Ian, and who knows, we might have Likely back next week. As long as we don't have him, he's very much in that mid-range tight end one, kind of a bucket. It's funny. We look up and suddenly we're flush with tight ends. At the early in the year, oh my God, it's the year of the worst tight ends ever. Now we've got tight ends coming out of our ears.
They are everywhere, man. Yeah, I'm sure Art But Sports, that account that manages to find a historical image for freaking everything that happens, they could help you out there. But either way, nice performance from Mark Andrews. Derrick Henry scored his 14th touchdown of the season. He has found the end zone in every game. Needs some help from Lamar Jackson to get there, though. It was courtesy of a ridiculous scramble where, honestly, Dwayne, I'm sure I wasn't the only one to almost get frustrated because it wasn't all smooth sailing for the Ravens out there. Seemed like Lamar was just running around the backfield a lot. But then sometimes you remember, oh yeah, he's Lamar Jackson, and these things usually work out. Wound up with 290 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, chipped in 33 on the ground, and a 2-point conversion. So down nights for Zay Flowers, just 34 scoreless yards on 6 targets. Had a couple short catches nullified. Nothing crazy. Would have cashed my parlay. Not a big deal. Not, bitter about that or anything, Dwayne. Sadly, though, didn't get a boom out of Deontay Johnson. Just 1 catch, 6 scoreless yards. Only ran 3 routes. One of which, yeah, he was open on a scramble drill. Just couldn't quite, keep his feet, slipped down. Big games though for Tylan Wallace, 115 yards and a touchdown on 3 targets, just 5 total routes. No, that is not sustainable. Yes, it was awesome. And also Rashad Bateman scored. Only other note I had for the Ravens is Justin Tucker missed an extra point. People are wondering, Dwayne, is he a fraud? Just people, not me. With the Bengals, kind of buried the lead a little bit here, but Jamar Chase, oh my goodness, man, 11 catches, 264 yards, not 1, not 2, but 3 touchdowns, 17 targets, Dwayne, showing everyone that, remember when we let him, we drafted him every single time we had a chance. Remember when people let this man slide to the bottom half of the first round, Dwayne? Couldn't have been us.
Yeah, and I've even had some people reaching out to me here in just recent weeks. They're like, man, there's something going on with Jamar Chase. And like the underlying targets and stuff have all been there, but he hasn't had the huge box scores. Well, he really made up for it all. And, when you say he hadn't had the huge box scores, he's still been good, Ian. Like he gave you 12, 18, 20, 11. Then he drops 55 just out of nowhere. What was the tweet you had on Jamar Chase?
He has... Since entering the league in 2021, Jamar Chase has 3 50-plus PPR point performances. The rest of the NFL combined has 4.
Yeah, that's all you need to say, man. This guy's just a unique blend of talent, Ian. He can beat you anywhere on the field. And, man, once he catches the ball, he turns into one of the best running backs in the entire NFL. So, and, man, just pulling away from dudes. That first touchdown, the second touchdown, he's just wide open. He's already it's semi-blown coverage. He's over the top. But the first one, that's classic Jamar Chase, catching the ball and then just hitting the accelerator in a way that really everyone realizes, oh, crap, I thought I had an angle. I don't have an angle, and now I'm just in the dust. Like, he is an amazing player. And man, that throw by Joe Burrow in the back of the end zone, dropping it over 2 defenders, like, oh my God, that one camera angle they showed, like the second or third angle they showed, was amazing. Seeing those 2 Ravens jumping up in the air and it's just right in the bucket over both of them to the back corner for Jamar Chase for a touchdown. That was great.
Did that remind you of any other previous touchdowns?
No, I'm not going.
Come on.
With the Mark. Come on.
No, not that. I'm saying I thought it was shades of Roethlisberger to Holmes in the Cardinal Steelers.
Oh yeah, where he got the commercial the next year where he's catching it on a wire, catching a touchdown on a wire. They say that's how he practices.
Wasn't the same level of toe drag swag. I understand Chase, just was able to easily. Very good. And again, it was just more so that angle of the 2 defenders being in the way. Ultimately, though, again, that 2-point conversion call did not quite work. Appreciate Mike Gesicki doing everything he could to try
Joe
to flop.
Burrow, Ian, in the last 2 games against the Ravens, 392 and 428, 5 touchdowns and 4 he has 9 touchdowns in the last 2 games against the Ravens. Are Super Bowl contenders, but man, they're going to have to do something about this secondary. I don't know what it is. Or you're just going to have to literally outscore every other team because that's a problem.
Now, Burrow, 24 touchdowns through his first 10 games. That is the highest mark of his career, besting his previous career high of 22. Mentioned Gesicki trying to get that flop in the end zone. Would have been nice because certainly wasn't filling up the box score as much as we wanted. 4 catches, 30 yards on just 9 targets. The process, though, Dwayne, with that 75% route rate, looking pretty good. Yep. Not a big game for Jermaine Burton. They tried, actually, 53% route rate, only behind Andre Yoshivas at 83%, behind Jamar Chase, of course. Caught just 1 of 5 targets for 11 scoreless yards, though. So only other point for the Bengals, Dwayne, would be Chase Brown, workhorse role, 88% snap rate. And kudos to the Bengals, man, for not trying to just simply run him into a brick wall all the time. Really made use of him in the short areas of the field as a pass catcher. And what a drug in full PPR.
Yeah, and you just hit it there. What a drug in full PPR, because this just really opens up the whole, gambit for ways that he can score fantasy points. He had a 78% route participation last night. That is a season high. And we know that the Ravens are one of the best run defenses in the NFL, to your point, to give them credit. They ran him early. They tried to establish it a little bit, but they realized it wasn't working, and they quickly just went to the passing game. And he was a big part of that. So whenever you didn't have Jamar Chase open downfield, they were checking it down to Chase Brown. And that's the thing, guys. That's why we want these roles where the guys are also getting the passing down reps. You also saw the Bengals go into their 2-minute offense several times in the game. And then on those drives alone, that's where we were getting a lot of those targets to Chase Brown underneath the coverage. Also a season high 19% target share, gave you 23.5 fantasy points. Coming off of 26.7 the week before. Yes, Chase Brown is a running back 1. And I know, guys, there's a lot of running back 1s. Utilization score-wise, Ian, over the last 4 games, we have 17 running backs that qualify to be in territory of being a running back one technically. Now, they can't all be because they're together in a race this year, but historically, we have 17 running backs that are grading out in running back one territory. Chase Brown is definitely one of those.
I know you messaged me earlier this week. Rest of season rankings, I believe you had Chase Brown RB8. This is certainly going to do nothing to change those spots. So again, great stuff from Chase Brown, and awesome seeing Dwain on one drive. He dropped a check down and then fumbled the ball away, leading directly to a Ravens touchdown, and they went right back to him. So just 2 total snaps for ex-Bear / new tradee Khalil Herbert out there. Very much remains Chase Brown backfield. So guys, that was your Thursday night football recap. Now we got tons of injury news to get to ahead of week 10. But first, a quick word to our friends over at New Era. Throwing a Broncos hat on, Dwain, who's rocking the Ravens last night. They've had enough good things going on. What's up, Fantasy Life fans? Show your support for those who serve with the official cap of Salute to Service from New Era Cap. With a snow camo crown and graphite accented team logos, the Salute to Service collection lets you proudly show your appreciation in a sleek and sophisticated way. Pay tribute to those who protect us with the official cap of the NFL from New Era Cap today. The NFL and New Era are dedicated to honoring our nation's heroes through contributions to the NFL Salute to Service charity partners. Learn more at nfl.com/salute. Injury season, and as always, Dwain, there are quite a few to get to. Kicking things off at quarterback, we are likely not going to be seeing Jaguars QB1 Trevor Lawrence under center this weekend. He is dealing with a left shoulder injury that, again, could potentially keep him out quite a bit longer. Obviously, a bit of a lost season for the Jaguars at this point, Dwain. And while Rap Sheet said there is no scheduled surgery just yet, when we hear guys like Jake Gruden saying his sources are saying there is a surgery out there, seems like it probably is not completely, all smoke here. So going to be Mac Jones season. I know we weren't exactly starting Trevor Lawrence to begin with, but Dwain, for you, did you downgrade Brian Thomas Jr. in the ranks upon hearing this news?
No, and I think this just kind of tells you like where I'm at on Trevor Lawrence. I mean, we talked about it a lot of times, but it's the inconsistency, Ian. Like he'll give you the 300-yard games, we know. But, 169, a 193, another 169, a 178, 162 yards. He's had a lot of really bad games this year, and he's all over the place. How different is that than Mac Jones? I'm looking at Mac Jones's career game log right now. 213, 252, 321, 194, 147, 382. They're probably the same thing as far as fantasy goes. I'm not saying that Trevor Lawrence isn't a better quarterback than Mac Jones. He probably is. But I think in fantasy, it's close enough. And we also have never seen Mac Jones with really good supporting weapons, to be fair to the guy, right?
How dare you?
We saw it in Alabama. We saw it at Alabama for sure. But, with the Patriots, we didn't really see a very strong supporting cast. So I'm kind of interested to see what we get out of Mac Jones this weekend. I don't think there's any reason to move Brian Thomas Jr. down. I don't think there's any reason to move Evan Ingram down. And the reason why is I think the range of outcomes for these two quarterbacks were both the same. They could give you 300 yards. They could give you 150. I can't tell you which it's going to be. So I'm keeping them all the same in the ranks.
Obviously, it's, again, a quirky matchup this week against the Vikings. They've given up tons of fantasy points to wide receivers and tight ends, but wouldn't be shocked, again, especially against the Jaguars offensive line that's done a pretty bad job, protecting the QB all season long. Really got exposed against Philly last week. Again, just kind of worried they're even going to have the time to attack those cornerbacks. We shall see what happens. But yeah, hopefully just see Brian Thomas Jr. in a little bit better state of health in his own right. Still limited with that chest injury. More on him a little bit later. So that's what's going on in Duval County with the Titans, though, Dwain. We have Will Levis potentially getting closer to playing. Haven't seen anything specifically from Brian Callahan or the Titans on whether or not he will start ahead of Mason Rudolph once he is good to go. That said, he did get a full practice in on Thursday while returning from this right shoulder issue. He was always limited in the previous week. So, Dwain, on the other side of things, again, not starting Will Levis unless we completely hate ourselves and want to try to punish ourselves that way. But Calvin Ridley, someone who has, earned his way into that wide receiver 3 flex conversation, going from Mason Rudolph to Will Levis, going to push him back down the ranks?
Yeah, that'd move him to boom bust wide receiver 4 territory. It's hard to say how far down just because we've got so many wide receivers injured and we've got 4 teams on bye this weekend. So he's still going to be in some of your starting lineups. But I would definitely say like medium-sized, smaller-sized leagues, like Calvin Ridley is going to the bench. It was not good with Will Levis. And the bust, the problem is like the boom could still be there, but the bust rate, Ian, is going to drastically increase. You could be back to one of those 3-point fantasy games from Calvin Ridley. He's really been grooving pretty nicely. Major hat tip, really, honestly, to Mason Rudolph, finding that groove with Calvin Ridley.
Chargers this weekend. Not going to be any easy matchup. But after that, man, they do get the Vikings, Texans, Commanders, Jaguars, Bengals, Colts, and Jaguars again. So God forbid we do get something close to stable quarterback play in Tennessee. Maybe Ridley can have some big booms down the stretch. Otherwise, guys, just a few other quick quarterback notes. Patrick Mahomes, with that ankle injury that initially looked horrible, is practicing in full. So no reason to believe he's going to be at all limited in week 10 or beyond. Also, Baker Mayfield, not practicing with a toe issue, but per Bucs beat reporter Rick Stroud, he has been told that Baker is fine. So good news, but yeah, that Buccaneers practice right now, guys, walking graveyard with all those wide receivers injured. That week 11 bye cannot come soon enough. And finally, Dak Prescott, almost assuredly out for at least the next couple of weeks. IR still remains potentially likely after he had his hamstring at least partially ripped off his bone. Ouch. So yeah, going to be the Cooper Rush experience in Dallas, facing the Eagles in Jerry World. What could go wrong there? So let's get to some running back talk right after a quick shout out to our friends over at Knockaround. Throwing on the Seahawks shades today, Dwain. They're pretty fresh. Again, we've been rocking the perp all season. You only get so many primetime games over here. And how could I not show off these lovely 12th man edition Seattle Seahawks lenses? Dwain, what are you rocking over there? Those look nice, man.
These are Pierside, that is the color, and Palisade, that is the actual the brand, not the brand. The brand is Knockaround. So the model or the frame. Sorry, the frame. I got producer Swing in my ear for these big decisions whenever I mess things up. It is the frame.
Well, they are fantastic frames. And again, I know sometimes you get these sunglasses under $50 and you think that they're going to be all flimsy. Not in Knockaround's case. These are high quality frames and lenses for a low price. And they also include UV 400 protection, which will keep those eyes fresh so you can go ahead and grind those fancy lineups all day long. But yeah, guys, again, check out all the NFL collection and just more regular sunglasses for yourself over at knockaround.com. Again, their officially licensed NFL collection includes frames from all 32 teams. I am loving strutting around Columbus, Ohio, wearing a different team every day. My neighbors must be so confused. But yeah, anyway, knockaround.com. Use code LIFE for free shipping on your order. Yeah, life is better with Knockaround. It really is better, Dwayne. I love Knockaround. My life has been better since they sent me a bunch of sunglasses. That's just a fact. So anyway, with running backs, got a couple feature situations to go through, starting off with the return of the 101. Christian McCaffrey is expected to make his season debut this Sunday, and the 49ers match up against a Buccaneers defense that really hasn't slowed down anyone for the better part of the last month and a half. So, Dwayne, at the end of yesterday, we were going through some, just this guy or that guy. You've had time to sleep on it. Just admit we're playing Christian McCaffrey over DeAndre Swift. Just admit it. It's okay. You're wrong.
What's funny is I have him one spot ahead of DeAndre Swift in my ranks. And so I guess I was trying to make interesting content. But again, it's in the range. Like, look, I'm starting Barkley over him, Derrick Henry, Kyron Williams, Bijan Robinson, Achane. Kamara, I'm starting over CMC. So Kamara is an important one, right? Because you were getting Kamara in round 4, 5, or 6 of your draft. Joe Mixon, I'm starting over CMC. That's an important one because you were getting him in rounds 4, 5, or 6 of your draft. So there are teams out there that might have Kamara and Joe Mixon. And in that case, I think in those unique circumstances, Ian, that's the time where you might have Christian McCaffrey on your bench. Aaron Jones is another guy that was going later in the draft. I've got him ahead. Breece Hall, you obviously know you took Breece Hall high. If you have Breece Hall, you don't have CMC unless you're playing in a dynasty league. Jonathan Taylor, same thing. So I think the important ones to note are Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon, Aaron Jones. I'm playing those three because they have big time roles on offenses that we like. Ian, do you disagree with any of those three?
No, I'm just happy that you came, to your senses with DeAndre Swift. That was my entire goal of this podcast today. So I think you're spot on with everything else. Now, we also do have Jordan Mason, Dwayne, with that shoulder issue. He was full on Wednesday and then limited on Thursday. Yeah. It's a shoulder. It could have just been maintenance. I don't think it's, reason to sound the alarms or anything. But let's go ahead, Dwayne, and assume that Mason is good to go for Sunday. Like, what do you actually see this split looking like? Because I know we were chatting in our rankings, update group, and some people are thinking more 50-50. I'm thinking it's more going to be 70-30 in favor of CMC from the get-go.
Yeah, I don't know which one it's going to be, but I know he's not going to get the passing down work. And so I don't want to use him. because that just really makes his path to victory of giving you the kind of fantasy performance you want really narrow. You actually need the scenario to come out in your favor of, oh, they only decided to play CMC 30% of the time, or maybe they just play CMC on mostly passing downs, third and long, 2-minute offense, that kind of thing. That's what you would need. And I don't think that we're good enough at predicting this sort of stuff. And there's too many good running backs this week, Ian. We talked about 17 guys over the last 4 weeks are running back ones. Well, this week, once you bake the matchups in, we've got like 22, 23 of them. So there's just not a reason, in my opinion, to force Jordan Mason. And so I've been pretty bearish on his outlook for this week. Where do I even have this guy? I've got him down at running back 33. Essentially, he's not in your line. I've got Jalen Warren ahead of him. I've got Bucky Irving ahead of him. I mean, that's a tier, though, right? It's a tier of part-time guys. That's where I see him now.
This would be the sort of matchup where I wouldn't be shocked if the 49ers can build a lead and actually get Mason, some extra work at the end of the game. They are 6.5-point favorites after all. But I'm with you, Dwayne. I'm looking at Mason almost as like Tyler Algier moving forward. And honestly, probably not quite as great of handcuff upside because, to your point, not being used the same way in the receiving game. So, no, try to keep him on your bench if you can. He still does have nice handcuff upside. We saw that when CMC was just out for the last 2 months. But, yeah, not expecting too much standalone value from now the 49ers RB2. Let's move on to a Panthers backfield that got a lot of attention yesterday, Dwayne, because Chuba Hubbard is now a very rich man, getting that 4-year, I believe, $33 million extension. Miles Sanders and his $25 million deal can just go ahead and sit there as the RB3, I guess, because rookie second-round pick Jonathon Brooks is probably back for this Munich-themed matchup here against the Giants. So Brooks has practiced in full all week, but man, I mean, as if we needed any more confirmation, Dwayne, this is still Chuba Hubbard's backfield. We got it yesterday. I mean, I know I had stashed Brooks in the Guillotine League just for a week because I knew he was coming back, and I cut him yesterday, man. I don't need to see what this game is going to be. I think we all know this is Chuba's backfield.
Yeah, it's Chuba's backfield. Look, Jonathon Brooks could eventually carve out a situation where it's more of a 50-50 split, and I think that's probably what you see more next year. Jonathon Brooks is still a really good player, but if you're in a dynasty league, this is a major blow because you were thinking potentially you've got a running back one going forward. Guys with Jonathon Brooks' profile, how quickly we forget the supermodel loved Jonathon Brooks. We looked at it was like 77% of the time these guys are a running back two by the time they get to season 2. And it was like 56% of the time they're a running back one, the guys that comped the closest to him. So he just had a lot of things we really like. He still has those things, but now we know for multiple years he's going to be splitting this backfield with Chuba Hubbard, and he could next year, Ian, like take the lead role in these two. But the point is, you're not going to get either one of them running away, in my opinion, completely. And if we had to give a favorite right now to the clear lead back, even heading into next year, it would still be Chuba Hubbard. Because like he's already shown it this year, they just paid him, so they're obviously confident in the two together. So I think it'll be more of a split. But yeah, the upside for having a high-end running back one the rest of the way, it's just not there. I saw some of the comps to the Lions backfield and things like that. And I don't totally disagree, but from a fantasy perspective, the challenge is this isn't the Lions. This isn't a team that every week, Ian, we look at their team total and we're like, whoa, 28 points, 27 points. There's going to be a lot of points to go around. No, we're talking about the Panthers. We're talking about a team that has 17 and 18-point team totals every week. So when you're trying to split that up, not near as juicy.
I mean, go back to 2011, man. We actually, we can go past Gibbs and Montgomery, guys. What about D'Angelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart doing their thing just for, who was it? Mike Tolbert to go ahead and vulture him at the goal line as well. We had that going on with the Ron Rivera Panthers. So, look, man, you have good football players on our team. Chuba has been killing it in a bad situation. He deserved the contract extension and everything. But I just don't want to all of a sudden see all these teams sinking resources into the running back position and our entire takeaway to be, oh, well, look at Detroit. They're really good, and they have 2 running backs they invested in. So not every running back duo needs to be David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. Maybe this one is. We talked about their investments in the, interior offensive line all throughout the offseason, Dwayne. But, yeah, for right now in fantasy land, certainly not good for Jonathon Brooks. And given some of the day 3 talent that we've seen out to position over the years, probably didn't need to sink that, top 50 pick into him. I think there were a few bigger holes in this roster, so he might have gone 50. 51-52. Regardless, Dwayne, let's move on to another backfield that does happen to have a pair of quality running backs, but their starter was out last week. Commanders RB1 Brian Robinson still dealing with that hamstring injury, still limited throughout the week. So did get a note from Dan Quinn saying I think he's optimistic that Robinson will be out there. Hopefully he is, man, because when he has been active, certainly been a safe bet for, about 15 carries and usually in this offense a touchdown.
Yeah, the challenge is you've got a Steelers matchup this weekend. They've been pretty good against the run game, a little more susceptible against the pass when they faced a good quarterback, but they're good against the run game. So it's going to be a challenge this weekend for Brian Robinson, and he's kind of been unlucky, Ian. Not kind of. He's been unlucky this year with the injury bug. Battled a knee injury, then he comes back and he gets a hamstring injury. We don't know if they're related. Sometimes these things are compensatory injuries. You're trying to make up for another area of your body not working so well, and you overdo it, and then that hurts something else. But having two injuries back to back, like I really am not crazy about trying to get him in my lineup this weekend, even if he's active. And so I intentionally made sure I had him outside my top 24. And right now I'm assuming that he's going to play, but I've got him at running back 25. I know you're still waiting to see how practice goes today. We'll see where you land on him. But if he's out, the other problem though is like last week, I was pretty much all in on Austin Eckler once we saw that Robinson was out, because the last game Robinson missed before last week, we saw a full workload for Austin Eckler. He had the passing down. He was getting the early down stuff. We had a little bit of Jeremy McNichols mixed in, but it wasn't really a ton. Last week, they went to a three-way committee with Brian Robinson Jr. out. So Eckler gets a small bump up the ranks if we don't have Robinson, but not the huge one that we were thinking last week. Now, they could decide that this is an Eckler game, and they use him more. That might make sense, getting the ball to the backs in the passing game instead of trying to pound them inside against that Steelers, and Cam Hayward. Like, that's not always a good plan. So we'll see what they do, but it's just enough that you can't be confident that suddenly, okay, Austin Eckler needs to move to like running back 18 or 15, which is that's what we were doing with him, before. Yeah. Now I think he's borderline running back 2 if Brian Robinson is out.
We got the touchdown last week, but yeah, we did not get the usage where we would be firing him up again that highly, because they do indeed like Jerry McNichols and Chris Rodriguez as well. So I will also note that Brian Robinson was playing through an injury in week 5, only had a 32% snap rate, came back week 7, only had a 40%. So really do think even if he is active, he's not exactly going to be featured like we saw early in the season. So I think you're spot on, Dwayne. Not a top 24 running back. Close start sit questions involving a Commander's running back. Might want to go with the other guy for at least a week. Let's move on to the Tennessee Titans. We have Tony Pollard started off the week with a limited practice, but then did not practice on Thursday. That said, Dwayne, he didn't practice all of last week, was listed as questionable, and wound up going out there and racking up his usual absurd workload. So Brian Callahan on record saying they need to creatively manage Tony Pollard's workload. Might have an opportunity, though, to get Tajay Spears back involved. He did get a full session in on Thursday after being a DMP last Thursday and Friday. So, Dwayne, hasn't exactly been the best offense in Tennessee. We know that. We just talked about Will Levis a few minutes ago, but Tony Pollard, man, has been a nice surprise. Hopefully he can, again, maintain this workhorse role even with the return of Spears.
Yeah, getting the full workload is the key. And if you've got a guy managing an injury and you get the other player in Tajay Spears back, who we also know is a pretty good player, I think this one's a little bit tricky this weekend. We've all got him as a low-end running back 2. The matchup also doesn't help. I'm not a firm believer that the Chargers' pass defense is actually good. They haven't faced very many good quarterbacks, but they have been shutting down the run, and they're very committed to it. So I do think that the Chargers actually have a pretty decent run defense. They also have done a good job of building leads. They rarely trail in games. They don't turn the ball over. They put other offenses in a situation where one turnover could put them in a scenario where they're trailing the whole game, right? And then that also just takes away rushing attempts. And so that's a big challenge for the opponents of the Chargers, who are playing, they're definitely playing hardball ball. They are playing hardball ball in a big time way. So throwing the ball a little bit more recently. But yeah, as far as Tony Pollard goes, low end running back 2. Again, I could see there's a lot of guys I'm starting over him this week. We can just name some of them. Najee Harris. Obviously, people are doing James Cook, but the other names like Tyrone Tracy, I'm starting over him. We already had Chase Brown ahead of him, but Tyrone Tracy is probably a big name that some people might be torn on. Do I start Tyrone Tracy? Do I start Tony Pollard? I'm starting Tracy. What about David Montgomery versus Tony Pollard, Ian?
Give me D-Mont, man. I mean, it's just that Lions offense. I'll take more touches there. What about James Conner, man? He's someone that I think I would trust.
Yeah, you know what? I know, and he's playing the Jets, and I think I am going to change this. I've got
Yeah.
Connor below him right now, but I usually on Fridays and Saturdays I work through my rankings again, like literally trying to think on these close calls. Who would I really start based on the information we know today? I do think I would start James Conner. I also think, sitting here thinking about it, I would start Chuba Hubbard over Tony Pollard.
Yeah.
Even though we're getting Jonathon Brooks back, I think Jonathon Brooks takes over the Miles Sanders role. I have no way of knowing, guys. We really don't know. We have no clue what Jonathon Brooks is going to do, and anyone that says they do, they don't. We don't know. But I assume it's going to be a smaller role to start. So I think I would go Chuba Hubbard as well over Tony Pollard.
Again, all these guys, we're talking about good running backs who have great workloads and everything. But when you look at the Titans offense and then you look at the, again, relatively tougher matchup against Joey Bosa and that Chargers front seven, I think there are enough tiebreakers to lean towards guys like Chuba, like Montgomery, like, Tracy, amongst others. All right, Dwayne, that is going to wrap up the key running back injuries we had to get to. There are a handful of other ones I want to quickly touch on, though. Kareem Hunt should be good, has that lingering quad issue, but he practiced in full on Thursday, so no concern there. Also, surprise, surprise, the king is back. Cordero Patterson, baby, practicing in full all week. Has not played since week 4, but averaging a team-high 5.8 yards per carry, Dwayne, no big deal. So amazingly hasn't been used as a returner yet this year. Maybe the Steelers are saving that for when it really matters. Kings stay Kings. Love having CPAT back in action. Also, keep an eye on James Conner, although it's just a finger injury, Dwayne. So even though he's been limited throughout this week, I'd be very surprised if that keeps him out. Also, fun fact, courtesy of our boy Gibbs and Fantasy Points, Connor has 54 broken tackles this year in second place. Kenneth Walker and Bijan Robinson tied at 31. Wow. Buccaneers running back Bucky Irving still limited with that toe injury, but that's been the case, and he's been playing through it without too much of an issue. Also, Jacksonville, all kinds of banged up. Tank Bigsby with an ankle and Travis Etienne with a hamstring, both still limited. New one, though, Dwayne, is Dearness Johnson was not listed on Wednesday, but then popped up with a hamstring injury on Thursday. Would be nice for the floor situations of Etienne and Bigsby to see Dearness out, but that said, not exactly a move that would make either guy a must play anyway. Also, Gus Edwards should be returning for the Chargers soon. He said he feels 100% and has been practicing in a limited fashion. So, Dwayne, at this point, if it's tough with bye weeks, do you feel like you need to hold Kamani Vidal on deeper rosters?
I'm still trying to, just because we love the profile, but I get it. Like if there is a week where you've got to do something, I get it. You've got to try to get a victory this week, Ian. Most of these leagues end in week 14 or 13, some of them in week 12 in the high stakes community. So if you've got to get a win, you've got to get a win, and you've got to make those tough decisions. I prefer to try to keep Vidal on my bench, but if I have to move on, then that's what you got to do.
Man's got to do what a man's got to do. Also note Saints running back Jamal Williams is limited this week with that groin injury, so it would just be a minor potential downgrade more to, I think, Taysom Hill than anything, but honestly, they haven't used Jamal Williams all that much anyway before. And finally, Dameon Pierce probably out for the Texans with a groin issue. He is still not practicing, so Joe Mixon, regardless of this, let's be honest, workhorse RB1 season will continue. So plenty of wide receiver issues to get to right on top, guys. First, though, a quick word to our friends over at DraftKings. A chill in the air, leaves falling to the ground, and football every weekend. That is what fall is all about, and you can make each weekend even more exciting by getting into the action with our partners at DraftKings, the #1 place to bet on touchdowns. And right now, all new customers who bet $5 will instantly get $200 in bonus bets. All you have to do is download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up using our promo code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours. Again, that's $200 in bonus bets instantly. You can stay in on the action, use your $200 in bonus bets to bet anytime touchdowns on DraftKings. After all, DraftKings is the place to bet touchdowns. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have the shot to win cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use our promo code FANTASYLIFE and bet just $5 on any wager to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code FANTASYLIFE only at DraftKings Sportsbook. All right, Dwayne, Christian McCaffrey presumably back and good to go. However, the other superstar who's been buried on our IR for weeks, Nico Collins, not looking as good with that hamstring injury. Unfortunately, still not practicing ahead of this Sunday night potential shootout here against the Lions. So sad news indeed. Hopefully he's back before too long, but assuming Nico Collins is out, Dwayne, hopefully another Tank Dell masterclass.
Yeah, if we get a DNP again today from Collins, I'm going to remove him from the ranks. I've got him in there as of right now. And looking at Tank Dell, we get this matchup against the Lions. It's been a better secondary lately. Like the Lions, I know early in the year we were torching them with pretty much every wide receiver. They've been a little better here recently. Now they had a run where it wasn't necessarily the best quarterbacks they were always playing, but that happens for all defenses. But Tank Dell right now, Ian, assuming that Nico plays, I've got him as wide receiver 23. So if I take Nico out, I'm going to move him ahead of DeAndre Hopkins, who's playing against the Broncos. I'm going to move him ahead of Devonta Smith, who's dealing with his own hamstring injury. He was limited yesterday in practice, and we're getting A.J. Brown back. I think that's about as far as I can go, though. Then you run into Brian Thomas, Josh Downs, Darnell Mooney. I mean, I think he's in that range with those guys. But then the next tier up, I'm definitely not putting him above Devontae Adams, George Pickens, Drake London. We'll talk about him here in a minute. So that would put him right there at that borderline mid-range wide receiver 2 territory. We've got 5 games essentially with him without Nico Collins. He's got a 20% target share. He's got 2 games where he jumped up to over 30%. And in both of those games, he gave you 18.6 and 18.7 fantasy points. So he's really been way more reliant on having to get the big target volume. And we don't know that he's going to get that all the time. We haven't seen the big plays. And that's what's missing from Tank Dell. And that's why, even if we don't have Nico, it's going to be hard for me to push him as high as we had previously. You're going to be starting him most of the time if Nico's out, but I've just tempered expectations.
I thought that game against the Jets last Thursday night was the best he's looked all season, just from an eye test, explosive, perspective. But again, was only one data point. And to your point, yeah, we have seen some duds along the way. So should be in more lineups than not. But I'm with you, Dwain. Right around that, I think I would start him ahead of Brian Thomas Jr. just because he's also a little bit banged up. The Mac Jones experience. We'll see what happens against that Brian Flores blitz happy defense. But yeah, Darnell Mooney, Drake London, probably just taking the safer bets there. Speaking of, we do have Drake London with that hip injury, practicing a limited fashion, presumably Dwain on track to play this week. So Drake London, when he is healthy, is into your lineups. And honestly, at this point, man, pretty tough to keep Darnell Mooney out regardless as well.
Yeah, I've got Drake London as wide receiver 17 this week. If he practices in full and gets removed from the injury report, Ian, I will probably move him to wide receiver 12, 11, somewhere in there. But that's where he's been. He's been a low-end wide receiver 1 to mid-range wide receiver 1 all year, been very dependable. So if we hear that he's a full practice today and cleared, I will move him up some. If not, I'm going to keep him right where he's at, assume that, maybe this hurts him a little bit. And to your point, Darnell Mooney's there. They've got Kyle Pitts. Didn't have a big game last week, but also Bijan gets involved in the passing attack. They've got other guys that they can also involve. They don't have to feed Drake London every game.
Fun fact, which you can find in my 32 Facts on 32 Teams article live on FantasyLife.com. Darnell Mooney and Drake London this year, number 1 and number 2 in receptions and yards, Dwain, on comebacks and outs this season. So again, if you guys have caught really any Falcons games, I guarantee you have seen Darnell Mooney have just an absolute sleeky, is that even a word? A crispy, that's a better word, out routes on the sideline, really making, some good plays there with his new employer in the ATL. Let's talk some Cowboys, Dwain. CeeDee Lamb been limited all week with a shoulder injury. Did say he is good, though, for this, again, NFC East showdown against the Eagles. So, yes, Cooper Rush is under center. Yes, he deserves a downgrade, but how far is too far, Dwain, for one of the best wide receivers in the NFL? Looking at the rankings right now, you and me, I believe, are a bit more bullish. He's my wide receiver 8. He's your wide receiver 12. But Mr. Friedman, amongst others, man, have him as low as wide receiver 19. And dare I say, wide receiver 31.
Yeah, and I get it. I understand the concerns. It's just tough for me to get him below low-end wide receiver 1. I will say, if you wanted to push him down, let's say you want to start Debo over him, fine. Terry McLaurin, I could get there on that. Devontae Adams, as good as he's played, I could do it. Devontae's had the targets, and now he seems to be getting that connection with Aaron Rodgers. The next one would be George Pickens. And then you got an injured Drake London. I feel like that's probably as far as I could go. So again, still, you're always starting him. You just have to temper expectations, man. Cooper Rush has dealt, what are we talking, 213 passing yards per game? I looked at it the other day. Maybe it was 215. Dak's been at 265. And you got a chance that CeeDee Lamb is not operating at 100%, and he could get hurt in the game. So, there's a chance CeeDee Lamb takes a hit that knocks him out. Maybe not the whole game. Maybe, he can't play for 3 series. We don't know for sure, but he's going to be limited in some way, shape, or form. So he carries a lot more risk this weekend. But again, I can't find a way to get him out. There's no way I could get him outside the top 24. So you're playing it.
I even think top 20, man. I'm not playing Josh Downs or Brian Thomas ahead of CeeDee Lamb. All due respect to those guys, but come on.
That's where I'm at.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on, man. It's CeeDee Lamb. All right. Speaking of those Colts wide receivers, you do have Michael Pittman dealing with a back and finger injury. He has not practiced this week. So Indy's kind of been wonky throughout the season with their injury reporting. I'm not overly concerned about this. That said, it was just a back last week, and he ended up not having a game status despite going DMP and then back-to-back then a full practice on Thursday and then a limited on Friday. So technically he did have a downgrade last week, but it just didn't matter. So Dwain, remember, this is Michael Pittman, who was supposed to be on IR with a back injury and then just ended up playing the next Sunday like nothing happened. So I'm inclined to believe this is fine here, but Indy, not exactly, the model, I guess, for good injury reporting in the NFL.
Yeah, with Pittman, I think it has piled up, right? He's been dealing with multiple injuries, namely the back injury. Just doesn't look like the same player right now. So I think you just got to have him as that borderline wide receiver 3, Ian, which puts him in territory with names like Quentin Johnston, Jordan Addison, Keenan Allen. Like that's not very endearing if you've had to start some of those guys lately. Those can be absolute duds. And that's really where Michael Pittman's at. He has the ability to be an absolute dud. Used to be thought of as a solid floor player, right? Because he could always give you the targets, but he didn't have the ceiling because he wouldn't break the long plays. Well, now we're even getting these games where he doesn't get the high target share. So that really hurts a possession wide receiver. A possession wide receiver without targets is not a good fantasy option. And due to injuries, I think that's where we're at right now with Michael Pittman.
Josh Downs remaining our pretty clear wide receiver 1. I just wish, Dwain, I'm not saying we need to take him away from Pittman necessarily, but can we get A.D. Mitchell more freaking snaps, man? I know you've shouted out his targets per route run rate and shout out to ESPN's open rating. A.D. Mitchell right now, tied for 3rd in open rating, man, among 111 qualified wide receivers. Josh Downs is 11th, and then you scroll down and you see Michael Pittman at 84th, Alec Pierce at 88th. So just one metric, I get it, but would like to see more of that rookie second rounder, especially if their season's going to continue to pretty much fly off the rails. Last wide receiver injury we really want to focus on, though, is Saints wide receiver 1, Chris Olave. Again, presumably set to miss definitely this week, and I would not be surprised if we see an IR stint or at a minimum multiple more missed weeks while he's recovering from a second concussion in, I believe, just 3 weeks. So also have Cedric Wilson out. I mean, Dwain, how can we not be excited about Mason Tipton's season? In reality, though, it really should be Alvin Kamara and Taysom Hill.
Yeah, I mean, Mason Tipton, we've seen him get the routes the last 2 weeks, 88 and 85%. Actually, the last 3 weeks, 90, 88, and 85%. He's out there enough that like he could come through for you in a really gross league where you're just scrounging at the bottom of
what
the
kind
barrel.
of league?
It's a skank league, Ian. That's what we call it, a skank league. 14% target share. 14% target share over that time, despite getting all that playing time. So not really ideal. And a passing attack that, let's be honest, it's lost all of its explosiveness without Rashid Shaheed. And then Chris Olave would obviously be another one. The one other guy, Ian, that I would lean into a little bit, you name the main ones, but Juwan Johnson. So I think you're going to see more of the 2 tight end sets. You're going to see they're going to play him more in the slot. He had a 74% route participation rate last week, only a 7% target share, but he is a guy that we have seen in the past actually get the targets. And we've also seen Derek Carr prefer throwing the ball to him once they get inside the 10-yard line. So a chance to score some touchdowns. So Juwan Johnson, if you're in one of those really gross skank leagues where there's nothing on the waiver wire, he could be another name.
I'm in a couple dynasty tight end premium leagues with Juwan Johnson. I found myself putting him in the flex this week over, some other guys because, I do think he's more or less going to be their number 2 receiver out there. But really should be Taysom Hill as a primary beneficiary. And, guys, he's made the most out of his opportunities pretty much all season long. 52.2% of Hill's carries have actually gone for a first down or touchdown this year. No other running back, it's actually higher than even 35%. So I continue to not know why Taysom Hill has tight end eligibility, but got to play the cards we are dealt. And accordingly, Dwain, he's coming in pretty high. He's my tight end 7 on the week. He's your tight end 10 on the week. When you have guys like Kyle Pitts, Dalton Kincaid, I understand starting them ahead. But man, like TJ Hawkinson, Jonnu Smith, a returning Dallas Goedert, I think we give the slight edge to Taysom Hill there.
Well, yeah, because Taysom could throw a touchdown pass. He could run for multiple touchdowns, and he could catch a touchdown. He had a 47% route participation last week. This is actually one of the few times in his life, this little stretch of games, where you technically could say he has tight end eligibility. That's where he's lining up the most. But he just has so many ways that he can score. Yeah, it's hard to keep him outside the top 10 this week. And he has upside. Like, what if he gives you one of each of those? Like, and that's a possibility with Taysom Hill.
Only a few guys in the NFL can do that. Taysom Hill and Bo Nix for some reason. But yeah, that actually happens. So other wide receiver injuries, I just want to quickly note, guys, the Eagles are a little bit banged up. A.J. Brown was limited on Wednesday. That said, guy in a full session on Thursday, putting him on track to suit up against the Cowboys this Sunday. Devonta Smith is dealing with a new hamstring injury. However, he went from a DNP on Wednesday to a limited session on Thursday. Cautiously optimistic he should be available. But yeah, if not, going to be that many more condensed targets for AJB and a potentially returning Dallas Goedert. More on him in just a few minutes. Also limited, we'll see, but I expect them to play. Deebo Samuel with that rib and oblique injury, as well as Jawan Jennings with that hip. Been limited this week, but having had that bye to get right, I would be surprised if they're ultimately not out there. But again, if we do get that questionable tag, looking at that 49ers game, oh nice, it's actually a 1 p.m. kickoff because it's in Tampa Bay. So no too crazy, 49ers hijinks. Hopefully, as I knock on wood in this one. Also, Bills wide receiver Amari Cooper still limited with that wrist injury. Meanwhile, Keon Coleman has not been practicing with his injury. We'll see if anything gives there. With Jaguars, we mentioned before, but Brian Thomas still limited with that chest issue. He was limited all last week and played, albeit did not look great. Gabe Davis continues to be limited as well. He did not suit up last week. Guys not practicing pretty much the entire Buccaneers wide receiver room. Mike Evans, Jalen McMillan, and Sterling Shepard, all with hamstring injuries, all not practicing. Would think that Shepard is the only one that really has a shot to play this week. Also would note Rams wide receiver Demarcus Robinson started off the week with a DMP ahead of Monday Night Football. Darius Slayton unlikely to make the trip to Germany while he's in the concussion protocol. Adam Thielen still not practicing with a hamstring injury. Should be another nice day for Xavier Legette and Cokehead fans out there. And also Juju Smith-Schuster and Mecole Hardman banged up for the Chiefs. So that was wide receiver. Now, Dwayne, let's get into pretty much the only overly big tight end news, and that is the probable return of Dallas Goedert. Old enough to remember, what was it, week 3 when he went for 150 plus, was it 180? He went for a ton of yards in that game, man. That said, coming back from the hamstring injury, and when these wide receivers are healthy, not too many targets to go around.
Yeah, and his big game came with the injuries to the wide receivers. Like, we didn't have A.J. Brown. I think Devonta Smith got knocked out of that game maybe around halftime. I can't remember exactly when that injury happened. So, yeah, Goedert, whenever you have both of those guys available, really more of just a borderline tight end one. So you guys have probably already found other better replacement options. Now, if we have a scenario where Devonta Smith somehow doesn't suit up, Ian, that would help Dallas Goedert. You also got, A.J. Brown removed, I believe, from the injury report. Maybe he's still on it, but he's been practicing with the knee issue that knocked him out last week. Yeah, so he's good to go, but coming off of an injury. So, I mean, there are some ways you could see Dallas Goedert sneaking into some value here. The biggest thing would be if we see Devonta Smith is not going to play, that would put him probably inside the top 10 for me this week. Otherwise, he's just a borderline tight end one.
Right now, we're in lockstep. Both have Goedert ranked as our tight end 13, but especially coming back from an injury like a hamstring, man, I'm trying not to be too overzealous. I do wonder if it could be a limited workload of sorts. So we do have Jonnu Smith, TJ Hawkinson, Taysom Hill, Kyle Pitts, Dalton Kincaid, amongst others, ranked ahead of Dallas Goedert this week. So only other tight end news, we do have Kyle Pitts popping up with a hamstring. Dwayne, he's been limited in practice. That said, he did play through this issue earlier in the season. It didn't really seem to impact his route rate. So cautiously optimistic this will not be an issue for Pitts. Also note Giants tight end Theo Johnson dealing with knee and back injuries, has been limited, but not expecting to keep him out of the lineup. If you guys want to wake up for that 9:30 a.m. Panthers versus Giants action, might be a decent enough, single slate flex play, or, just shot in the dark. What are we talking about? Panthers tight end Jatavian Sanders with the wrist and ankle, not listed, Dwayne, and then got added with the LP. So he actually looked pretty good out there last week. Had a hurdle, very big target down the seam, shades of Mo Alley Cox, if you will. But we also could see Tommy Tremble's coming back from that back injury. So, don't exactly want to fully trust Jatavian Sanders just yet. How did he end up popping in the supermodel, Dwayne? Because I know really at certain points of the offseason, Jatavian Sanders considered, maybe the primary receiving tight end to be excited about in fantasy. And I know we don't love the Panthers passing game as a whole, but he has had a couple nice performances this year.
He didn't come out as high as I had hoped he would in the supermodel, even prior to draft capital. But ultimately, draft capital is what really hurt him. At one point, we thought he might sneak into the second round. That didn't happen. So that also ended up hurting him. So he's in the range, though, like where it could happen. But it's also one of those guys where it's not like a flag plant. But he was really good last week. He ended up being the guy that, with everybody hurting and out, he was the primary target earner for Mr. Bryce Young.
87 yards, then a dub with 7, 61, 49, 3 of these last 4 weeks. So again, a bit of a new era going on there in Carolina. We'll see if Jatavian can solidify that tight end 1 job. But hey, when you get guys like Trembles, Ian Thomas in there, does complicate matters. So that does basically sum up the tight end news. I actually was surprised, Dwayne. Usually there's a lot more offensive line and defensive stuff going on, but somewhat clean week, at least relatively compared to what we've seen. I will say the Commanders unlikely to get Marshawn Lattimore there. He has not been practicing with that ongoing hamstring issue, and it remains to be seen if the Cowboys are going to get their defensive reinforcements. Michael Parsons still practicing in a limited fashion, and Deron Bland still on the sideline with that foot injury. So with that, it is time for everyone's favorite segment. How many of those are there, you ask? There's as many as I say there are. It's our bold predictions. Dwayne, last week, not our best performance, just 1, 2, and 1. You did hit on Chase Brown going for 157 yards and a touchdown. Good job by you. But we're going to give ourselves an L for the Jordan Addison take, 51 yards and a touchdown on Sunday Night Football. Definitely a bust on Michael Pittman with 14 scoreless yards. And sadly, we did get a DMP with Brian Robinson, unfortunately not playing. I will say, though, Dwayne, Commanders ran for 164 yards against the Giants. So I'm not going to say the process was right, but if you wanted to say that, I would not disagree. So with that all in mind, Dwayne, right. Yeah, the process was right. He said it, guys. So let's get into this week, Dwayne. Bold prediction number 1 ahead of week 10. What say you?
It's Tyrone Tracy, playing against the Panthers. Look, we should care about outlier, really good matchups, and that's what you have right here for Tyrone Tracy going out and getting to play against the Carolina Panthers. Ian, Giants are 5-point favorites in this game, and if you just look historically at what we have from a utilization score perspective for Tyrone Tracy, since we've had Devin Singletary back in the lineup, it says he's probably a strong running back 2 the rest of the way. Well, now you get a strong running back 2 playing in a matchup like this. That equals really good things. I'm not going to list what all the running backs have done to the Carolina Panthers this year. We did that on yesterday's show, so I won't bore you. If you want to hear it, go back and listen to yesterday's show. But there's a lot of really big numbers in there, and not just for one running back, for 2 running backs on these teams. So, for example, we had Roshan Johnson go for 15 and DeAndre Swift for 20 on the same team. Ooh. It's same thing for Algier and Bijan. So it's just been a really, really good matchup. One of these that has pretty much come through for us every time, except for Javonte Williams. So I'm just going to stick with it with Tyrone Tracy, a guy that's playing really well right now. Ian has a good role, and this is a smash matchup.
Might be a decent ladder bet for the rushing yards, huh, Dwayne?
Yeah, I got him at 135 total yards and 2 touchdowns.
Ooh, so. Okay, I can get behind that. So feeling good about Tyrone Tracy. Also, guys, starting to feel good about TJ Hawkinson. Get ready for some tight end propaganda here, because I believe our next 3 are all going to be tight ends. But yes, with Hawkinson, again, just got his feet wet last week, 60% route rate. I think we see that get back to his usual 70% plus against the Jaguars defense that ranks, absolutely last in EPA allowed per dropback. So again, the only really issue in this Minnesota passing game has been not quite enough volume to go around, which I do recognize could be a concern here. But that said, man, I want to be a week early, not a week late on this Hawkinson inevitable breakout. We are all talking about the guy who had the second most PPR points per game at the position last year. So give me 7 catches, 85 yards, and not 1 but 2 scores. This is going to be the fantasy life tight end week, maybe not national one, because Dwayne, going back to you, you want to talk about a Bills pass catcher who, again, maybe hasn't been filling up the box score, but the utilization has sure been nice.
Yeah, I think Dalton Kincaid actually enters like the flex position as well, potentially this week. Like if you've got another tight end, like maybe you grabbed Cade Otton off the wire, you're starting him obviously over Dalton Kincaid. But I really like the matchup, number one, against the Colts. But really the biggest thing, Ian, is the fact that over these last 4 games, he's got a 24% target share. He's coming out here and he's doing his part. We've also talked about the Bills have turned into more of a pass-heavy team over the last 3 games, looking more like that old-school Josh Allen Bills approach that we used to see. So I think that's another positive thing going for him. And then we've got Keon Coleman banged up. We've got Amari Cooper still trying to integrate to the offense. He's got a wrist injury. So Kincaid playing well. You got a good matchup. You got other teammates banged up. The Bills throwing the ball more. All of those things add up for me to 100 yards and a touchdown. Ian, very similar to Jackson Smith and Jigba, a player that, was getting all the low A-dot looks, not breaking a lot of big plays, but then suddenly we see this breakout performance. I think we might see something similar to that for Dalton Kincaid this weekend for the Colts.
Certainly a defense that we want to make a habit of attacking, just like that Rams one. So final one is, yes, another, I guess we'll call him a tight end here. To Dwayne's point, he has been playing there a bit more often than usual. Taysom Hill, give me 80 plus total yards in not one, but 2 trips to the end zone. Home matchup against the Falcons defense that, with all due respect to Jesse Bates, I still don't think is this world-beating unit. And as long as Chris Olave is going to remain out, Jamal Williams is banged up, Kendre Miller's on IR, it would make a lot of sense if Taysom Hill continues to be featured with double-digit combined carries and targets, which again is pretty freaking sweet for a player who, is a bit old, but guys, the Mormon missile man around that goal line, he's going to make some good things happen. So we do see this, Dwayne. I haven't run the numbers, but I feel like when you have, more of a, Josh McDaniels, a Dennis Allen type coach who, let's face it, I don't think everyone in the locker room loved. You take him out of the picture, and I'm not saying the Saints are going to go ripping off like this big win streak, man. Yeah, it's going to be some sort of a relief here. So again, more of a vibe feel there. Don't have the analytics or the numbers, but again, either way, even just based on the utilization, Taysom Hill should be looking at good things ahead. So you guys heard it. Tyron Tracy, TJ Hawkinson, Dalton Kincaid, and Taysom Hill. I'm with you, Dwayne, and doing it in a couple of leagues where if there was a week to really be willing to flex that tight end, it is probably this one. So that's going to do it for us, everybody. Hope you guys enjoyed this week's allotment of shows. Dwayne and I will be back on Sunday night breaking down all the action that went down, but otherwise, have a freaking great weekend. So for Dwayne, for producer Matt, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning into the Fantasy Life Show. And until next time, take care, everybody.